Hello everyone! Today we're going to discuss this 1996 Hollywood version of Emma, because I had a hankering to watch it again recently, and if I'm going to watch it, I might as well review it, right? This adaptation of the 1815 Jane Austen novel, adapted and directed by Douglas McGrath, stars Gwyneth Paltrow as Emma Woodhouse, the handsome, clever, and rich young woman who tries her hand at matchmaking with mortifying results. Just so we're clear before I go any further, this movie is not to be confused with the other British adaptation of Emma that came out in 1996, starring Kate Beckinsale. That is not what I'm discussing today. This movie has the unique distinction of being the second Jane Austen adaptation I ever saw. The first was the 1995 Pride and Prejudice. I'd seen that several times already. But it was when my mom, my sister, and I stumbled upon this playing on TV one afternoon that I discovered, hey, Pride and Prejudice is not the only one of its kind. Jane Austen wrote a whole bunch of stuff that was made into movies, and I really like this kind of thing. In fact, all three of us were taken with the movie. We liked the movie. I think we especially liked Jeremy Northam's Mr. Knightley. So, since I was a little kid, I've enjoyed this movie, and whenever I watch another version of Emma, I come to the end of it and think, well, that was good, because there really isn't any bad adaptation of Emma. But then I also think, this one's still my favorite. In interacting with people on the internet, though, I've often felt led to be apologetic when expressing that opinion, as if this movie is only a guilty pleasure. Jane Austen fans, like the fans you'll find in pretty much any fandom, can be quite formidable. Not all of them, but some of them. And some people are as dogmatic about which Emma adaptation they prefer as they are about pretty much everything else. The truth is, I don't feel any guilt about liking this movie. I recognize that it's not perfect, that where some aspects are concerned, it leaves a little something to be desired, it makes some unique choices, and it's more a romantic comedy than a distinguished costume drama. But I contend that as a movie and as an adaptation, it's fine. Gwyneth Paltrow stars as Emma Woodhouse, and while I think that Gwyneth Paltrow is kind of ridiculous in real life, I'm able to set that opinion aside while watching the movie. I think her characterization of Emma is fine. She hits all the marks. I don't know why they couldn't get someone who is actually English to play the part, but I don't have any quarrel with her accent. The character needs to have enough confidence and pride to believe that she's always right, so that her pride can eventually suffer a fall and she'll come out a better, humbler person in the end. But she can't be so obnoxious and cocky that the audience views her as a detestable, simpering braggart and wants terrible things to happen to her. I think Paltrow maintains her balance along that thin line quite well. Toni Collette, who's a much bigger star now, plays Emma's naive friend Harriet Smith. She's always struck me as looking more mature than other Harriets, older than the character's supposed to be. In reality, she's just a few months younger than Paltrow. She also plays Harriet as really dumb, but that's what the script required of her. I view it as a point in Emma's favor that she overlooks Harriet's obvious inferiority and takes her under her wing. Emma is a snob and is condescending in her treatment of her protégée, but it seems evident that if she really thought Harriet was beneath her, as some do, she wouldn't treat her as a friend and a sort of equal. The advice she gives Harriet, too, isn't all bad when it's non-specific and not driven by her own intentions and goals. She is manipulative, though. She's that friend. Oh, did Mr. Martin remember to get the book you told him about? No? That's interesting. I heard Mr. Elton say something nice about you, but I'm not going to tell you what it was. It's so annoying when someone does that. There's a lot to notice on these sets. Nice furniture and decor, many interesting little pieces placed around the rooms. What I really noticed, though, are all the fruits and vegetables snuck into the design. On the dinner table, in the decorations, we've got apples, pumpkins, orange trees. It's amazing, but though costumes and settings tend to be similar, every adaptation of Emma manages to have its own distinct look. This version is characterized by a golden hue and slightly softened look. There's something summery about it, even in scenes that don't take place in summertime. There's a lot of light, pale colors in daytime scenes, and warm glows and saturated reds and blues in night scenes. Mr. Knightley, my favorite Austen hero, is played by Jeremy Northam, and is pretty darn swoon-worthy. Northam's portrayal of the character is more genteel, but still relaxed. He's a country gentleman, but he's never brusque. You get the impression he gets along well with everyone, even those he doesn't like that much, and he's a patient, forbearing man, perhaps the most patient Mr. Knightley in all the adaptations. He's well put together, but he doesn't look like he spent a lot of time on his appearance. It's an understated, but very warm performance. Paltrow and Northam have excellent chemistry, conveying the chummy intimacy of a lifelong friendship. They often glance at each other as if they're sharing a private little joke, but there's never anything indecent about it.
Emma didn't ask me to contribute a riddle.
Your entire personality is a riddle, Mr. Knightley. I thought you overqualified.
That there is a secret love there becomes apparent to the viewer, especially the viewer who's in the know, but that Emma is totally unaware of it makes sense as well, is usually conveyed in lingering gazes after she's turned aside or walked away. And as usual, Mr. Knightley is the most relatable character. For example, he doesn't want to go to a ball, he just wants to hang out at home, or go to Emma's house, which for him is like a second home.
I just want to stay here where it's cozy.
I was shocked the first time I read the book, which I did not long after seeing the movie, to discover that there's no archery scene. They have this same conversation, but they're not wielding bows and arrows while they do it. And yet, that's one of the main scenes in the movie. It's certainly one they chose to highlight in all their marketing. This argument over Emma's plans for Harriet's future is not played out as a shouting match, and the dual symbolism they're going for is very obvious, the Cupid imagery and Emma's arrows missing the mark while his are on the target. But when I reread the book, or think of some of the key lines of dialogue, like "men of sense do not want silly wives," or "vanity working on a weak mind produces every kind of mischief," he is not her equal, he's her superior in both sense and situation, and better to be without sense than to misapply it as you do. I recall them the way Jeremy Northam says them here. And then, of course, we always liked how they cap it off with her last arrow symbolically going astray.
Try not to kill my dogs.
Mr. Elton is played by Alan Cumming, who speaks his flattering lines with such syrupy enthusiasm that his already silly remarks seem even more absurd.
I hope I'm not intruding.
Like the argument, this version of Mr. Elton's proposal, because I saw it first and I've seen it the most, is the one I compare all the others to, and it's Alan Cumming's delivery I hear in my head when I think of it.
Miss Smith, what sort of message would I want to send to her? Miss Smith?
I thoroughly enjoy the choreography of this proposal, with Emma and Mr. Elton moving from one side of the carriage to the other, and this always makes me laugh. The music for this film was composed by Rachel Portman. It's a very pleasant score. My sister had the soundtrack. She probably still does. One of the best cues comes right at the end of this proposal. This scene follows an unfortunate Christmas party where we got to hear some festive holiday music, but Emma's shock at Mr. Elton's proposal is reflected by a jarring change in the music, which for a second there seems to be echoing the Jaws theme, and then it bursts into an intensified rendition of the film's main theme. It's very cool. Miss Bates is played marvelously by Sophie Thompson. Again, I end up comparing everyone else I see to her, fairly or unfairly. Her Miss Bates is delightfully annoying, with her inane repetition, high-pitched giggles, and fluttering movements. She's just like a bird. But she's completely harmless and not unlikable or rude, so it's not hard to sympathize with her when it comes to that. Mrs. Bates, Miss Bates's mother, is played by Felita Law, who is Sophie and Emma Thompson's mother in real life. I never knew that until a couple of you informed me in the last year. By the way, classic movie fans may be interested to hear that Kathleen Byron makes a brief appearance in one scene early on as Mrs. Goddard. Jane Fairfax is played by Polly Walker, who gives a subdued interpretation of a character that's already pretty nondescript. We really don't see much of her, though she appears to be a nice enough person, and yes, very elegant. She seems like an odd partner for an extrovert. Frank Churchill is played by Ewan McGregor, who has become way more famous since appearing in this movie. Hello there.
General Kenobi!
Horrible wig aside, Ewan McGregor's Frank Churchill is a winsome, albeit mischievous guy. What he's up to is unclear, but the characterization doesn't go overboard in one direction or another. One big thing that's missing here, to the adaptation's detriment, is the outing to Donwell Abbey, where his behavior is much more churlish, and you start to wonder, what's going on with this guy? What do we not know here? He also isn't as flirtatious with Emma as he acts in other versions. A little bit flirtatious, but not as much. Therefore, I think he maintains his likability more than some other Frank Churchills. He is deceptive, but since we didn't see that moody side and we weren't too injured by the deception, we don't hold it against him for as long. Another fun scene, which isn't in the book, is the duet. Emma's at the piano performing for the guests, singing a solo, and everyone, including Mr. Knightley, is enjoying it, and then Frank pops up and joins her. It's a very pretty song. Paltrow has a pleasant voice, and if you've seen him in a musical, you know he can sing. But it's also funny because of Mr. Knightley's reaction, whereas everyone else, when Frank joins in, is like, "Oh, how lovely!" Mr. Knightley is like, "Grrr." And then we get a fun moment afterward when Emma's alone on the sofa throwing Mr. Knightley the "come talk to me" look, and he gives her a cheeky side-eye before acquiescing. Juliet Stevenson plays a well-dressed but vulgar Mrs. Elton. She's constantly steamrolling her husband and everyone else, but she's also just got horrendous manners for someone who thinks so highly of herself. She seems older, and Stevenson is several years older than both Paltrow and Cumming, which indicates to me that while Mr. Elton and she herself think she was quite a catch, she was probably dangerously close in the eyes of Bath society to being on the shelf, if not there already. I think of her kind of like the Blanche Ingram of the Emma group. I actually feel a little sorry for Mr. Elton at a certain point. He seems aware of what he's gotten himself into, and when she says something especially tasteless, his eyes nervously dart in Emma's direction as if he's embarrassed or apologetic. But then he snubs Harriet at the ball, and it's like, no, you're a jerk. There doesn't seem to be as much build-up to the ball in this version. They don't spend quite as much time anticipating it and talking about it, so it doesn't feel as much like a big, pivotal event. Maybe I feel that way because I've just seen it handled more climactically in other adaptations. Fans of this version are probably very familiar with the dance. The dance itself is suspiciously similar to the one from Pride and Prejudice. Same music, similar choreography, made just 1 year later. Mr. Knightley here surprises us all with the revelation that he is, in fact, a very graceful dancer, but if you pay close attention, you'll notice that the placement of his arm and hand is different from that of the other male partners, at least in the first time they come together. At the beginning of the set, the couples are meant to meet in the center, join hands, spin, and separate. But Mr. Knightley steps closer and puts his arm around her waist instead. Ha ha ha! I don't really like that the strawberry picking outing and the excursion to Box Hill have been combined to occur on the same day. I subsequently have always been confused when they didn't do that in other adaptations, and it's all this movie's fault. I do get why they did it, though. They've only got 2 hours and they need to save some time. So while they do spend a generous amount of time on the Harriet Mr. Elton pickle, the anagram kerfuffle at Donwell has been removed, and therefore the Frank and Jane storyline is much less developed, which unfortunately is the case with a lot of adaptations. Is that something about the adaptations, though, or is that something about the original novel? I would say that Jane Austen herself didn't develop that storyline or cover it, especially in the end, enough to really give you something to sink your teeth into. Box Hill, as usual, is a nightmare. I think my mom would just as soon walk out of the room for this part. I don't recall how it's supposed to be laid out, but here they have Mr. Knightley sitting right next to Miss Bates in the shot with her, so when Emma says the thing, we're getting both of their reactions. The only other person the camera shows is Mrs. Weston, who shakes her head in disapproval. So when Miss Bates is taken aback and starts saying those pitiful comments, she's saying them mostly to him, which makes him even angrier at Emma. He's been relatively calm all along, so when he loses his temper and actually jerks Emma around to face him, it feels that much more explosive. It's like he could put up with her airs and idiosyncrasies and mistaken ideas, but he draws the line when she insults poor Miss Bates. Yet even when it's clear he's furious with her, when he drives his final point home, his rebuke is softly spoken. He's not going to yell and verbally thrash her because that's not the kind of man he is, and he knows he's gotten his point across already. Also, you get the sense that doing this hurts him as much as it hurts her. I do think that while we see Emma realizing the hypocrisy of her behavior, giving charity but not kindness, it's too bad we don't see her apologize. We know that she's humbled, we know there's awkwardness now between her and Miss Bates, and we hear about it taking time and effort for her to make amends, but we don't see any of it, and I would have liked to make that character development feel more complete. But hey, we've got a movie to end and lots of loose strings to tie up. In the confrontation scene with Harriet, Harriet does not become accusatory. She's too self-deprecating for that, and anyway, Emma recognizes her wrongdoing on her own without being chewed out for it. Harriet's just a conduit, an injured party who doesn't point fingers at anyone but herself. And then, eventually, we have the proposal sequence, which starts with Emma and Mr. Knightley almost crashing into each other, and though they've been completely at ease together up to this point, they're super awkward now. You know, it's funny, every adaptation wildly differs in how the proposal sequence is interpreted. Just the approach to the scene, the very beginning, how they meet each other, is so different. Mr. Knightley is amped up and ready to pop the question, and he's more buoyant and enthusiastic than we've ever seen him, until she dashes a bucket of water over him. She does that multiple times, interrupting him, changing the subject, telling him about the pipes they're having installed. Or no, it's a drain. Did I tell you we're having a new drain installed? Ordering him not to continue with what he was going to say, and then apologizing by saying, as your friend, as your old friend, when his whole point is, I don't just want to be friends anymore. But once she gets out of his way, or out of her own way, what follows is a sweet, honest, and endearing divulging of feelings. I've always adored the line, if I loved you less, I might be able to talk about it more. But I also like his sheepish, I rode through the rain. I'd ride through worse if it meant I had some chance to win you. And the line, maybe it's our imperfections that make us so perfect for one another. Two lines which I don't believe are in the book. And then there's the long-awaited kiss, which is very nice, and any hiccups are speedily dealt with when she breaks away and says, "I can't marry you because I can't leave my father." He immediately comes up with a perfect solution. All turns out well. Emma is 100% done with matchmaking, thank goodness. The movie ends with a wedding, and everyone, except maybe the Eltons, lives happily ever after. And that's the movie. It's funny, it's romantic, it's charming, it hits all of the major and most of the minor plot points. My main criticism with regard to how it's filmed is that there are a few too many dramatic, swooping zooms that don't serve a clear purpose. But I love this version. I always have, so I am biased in its favor. There is a good deal of content missing if you compare it to the book, mostly little things. John and Isabella Knightley, for example, are barely in the movie, which I find a little disappointing. But as a kid, I never viewed these differences as shortcomings. I didn't view them in a negative light. I just accepted that the movie couldn't include everything, and used that as an incentive to familiarize myself with the book and all that it had to offer. So, those are my thoughts on Emma. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have some thoughts on this version of Emma, I would love to hear them, so sound off in the comments below, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.